Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am so excited to have you with us today on the show because it's going to be a fantastic one. We have Jackie Poole from the UK with us, who is incredible. And but before we get started with our first guest, we get a lot of new listeners. So I want to first of all tell you a little bit about Alzheimer Speaks and why we exist. Alzheimer Speaks really was created as an advocacy-based company to provide multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture around the world from crisis to comfort. I'm the founder, Lori LeBay, and I am a firm believer that the only way we are going to make progress here is to work together. I've personally been on this journey with my own mother for 30 years, and I know a lot of you never imagined that it could last that long. She's still healthy. She's been in her end stages for 4 years. So, it just proves a point that we never know with dementia what this disease is about. And so we have to be prepared. And I think one of the best ways we can do that is by sharing our knowledge and having everyday conversations about life with dementia so that we can remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help those in the trenches pull back their lives and live with purpose. Together, we really, truly can understand the real needs of this disease and remove those myths and remove those stigmas and get rid of that isolation. It's so sad. We see it all the time. Collaboratively, we're going to win this battle. I have no doubt about that at all. And I have to thank each of our listeners from the bottom of my heart. It has been through your commitment, your clicks, your sharing our information with your friends, your family, your coworkers that has allowed us at Alzheimer Speaks with all of our platforms to become the #1 influencer online for Alzheimer's, according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz. So I hope you can continue that support. And again, if you just click on those little tabs of liking and tweeting and sharing it with your LinkedIn groups, those things are very, very powerful. So don't discount them. I also hope that you will go to alzheimerspeaks.com and see all of our other platforms. We have a blog that's been going on for over 4 years, so there's tons of information there. We do webinars called Dementia Chats, which I invite you to participate. Those are done on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month, and they're free, and we would love for you to be part of that with us. If you're listening and during the program you decide you want to communicate with us, you can use your chat box or you can always call in live. And that number is 714-364-4757. Again, that's 714-364-4757. And I always like to mention to people, because we have people listening all over the world, if you're looking for an Alzheimer's Association and some support, go to Alzheimer's Disease International. You can just Google that, or you can go to www.alz.co.uk, and they will have a list of all the associations throughout the world, so you can find the one closest to you. And I always like to mention my friends at Coral Health that just rolled out that new app called Music First, which I highly recommend you check out and try. You can get 3 hours of customized music to use for yourself. And then Patient Access is having a study for tau, and you can just go to alzheimersstudies.com to get more information on that. So let me go ahead and introduce this wonderful woman that I'm bringing to share her wisdom with us today. Jackie Poole's background is wide and diverse and so filled that I can't do it justice. But so I'm just going to highlight a few things for you. She is an expert in dementia care with a reputation for quality and innovation. She is consistently developing new training practices and materials, and she is regularly published in peer-reviewed journals and textbooks. She's a frequent speaker at national and international conferences. Jackie has sat on the reference group for the National Dementia Strategy, which was Living Well with Dementia in 2009, and she was commissioned by the Skills for Care to write the National Dementia Care Qualification Framework. She has almost 29 years specialty experience in dementia care, first working as an occupational therapist and support worker, and then qualifying in 1988 as an occupational therapist herself. She is just so absolutely incredible. She now has her own company where she sets up leadership and training programs at Jackie Poole and Associates. So I am just thrilled to death to have Jackie with us. How are you doing? And welcome, Jackie.
Thank you very much, Laurie. I'm doing well, thank you. Gosh, that was a really lovely introduction. Thank you.
Well, you are just such an amazing woman, and I love my job because I get to talk to people like you, and I get to hear all these wonderful things that you're doing, and what's even more important to me is your willingness to share them, with the world, because none of us can do this alone. And so like I said, you're just doing so many fantastic things. I just can't even wait for this conversation to start. So I guess I just have to shut up and we can get started here. Well, why don't I always like to ask my guests one first question, and that is, Jackie, have you been personally touched by dementia with, family or friends yourself?
Oh, yes. I mean, actually, many years ago, and probably at that time, I was a young child and didn't really know much about dementia. But there again, I don't think many of us did. One of my grandmothers had dementia, but we didn't really recognise it as such at that time. But more recently, my own mum has dementia as well. So we've been on that journey with her too.
Wow, it's amazing how things just pull together, and for me, I never in a million years would have thought I went down this path, even though I had an aunt that crushed my heart when I was 13 years old when she didn't remember my name. As you grow up, you kind of let that go. But then with my own mother having this struggle for 30 years now, I can't walk away from it. It's my life, it's my passion, and I just see so many things that need changing, which I know from our conversations you see as well. Let's start out with describing what is a dementia champion. What does that mean to you, and how does that work?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know if it's a phrase that's used in other parts of the world, but here in the UK, it's been used in several different ways, to be honest. So nobody's absolutely clear what that role is, and I think that's probably a good thing because, in fact, I think a dementia champion can be a person in many different roles. I think it's more about the qualities of an individual rather than the particular job that they do. So I mean, essentially, it's somebody who I think who's got the vision and the courage to make changes for the better for people with dementia. And it can be as much about championing the cause of people with dementia, but it can also be about championing the cause of people who support people with dementia as well. So family carers, but also professional carers in care settings, because, you know, as we know, it's not always an easy job. It's a very fulfilling job, I think, because of that. But people do need championing, need some support. So really, I think somebody who fulfills that role is somebody who certainly has got a lot of knowledge and hands-on experience. It's no good having somebody who's done all the learning and got all the qualifications but doesn't know what it's actually really like when you're there with people. And then on top of that, I think there has to be a real passion and a commitment and a drive to make changes happen, and an ability to communicate to others and to share knowledge and to inspire others. So many things, really. Does that describe it, do you think?
Yeah, I do. And I love what you said is, you know, there really isn't one definition, because I think that's where we get stuck, is when we think we have it figured out. That to me is when we lose our creativity and we stop really looking at the big picture and the big needs, because we think we have it all covered. So I love that openness and that flow. You know, we've taken the Memory Cafe. The UK pretty much gave it to us and actually even rewrote the guidelines and just said, you know, develop them and they will come. And we have all different types of them now, and we've taken that philosophy of listen to the people and what do they need, and go from there. Let that be your base, instead of being an organization that says, I have a service and this is what it is, and now you will come. You know, we start there a little bit, but it's just a much more open philosophy. So I really embrace that myself a lot. Can you tell our audience why you think it's so important to have these Dementia Champions?
Oh yes. I think people, well, the service to people with dementia, it's very easy to only see the negatives. And I'm not by any means saying that having dementia is something that people celebrate when they get that diagnosis and realise that, you know, they've got these difficulties by any means. But I think it's also important to recognise that that people with dementia can live well with dementia, hence the subtitle of our National Dementia Strategy over here. And so I think to have a dementia champion is somebody who can put the positive story and show people what is possible, rather than only the negative and what the difficulties are. You know, I mentioned earlier on about when I said about my mum, about how, going on this journey with her, and I think it is a journey, and it need not necessarily be all a negative. In fact, my own mum, I think I would say that she's very content most of the time, and is certainly having a high quality of life. She's enjoying life in some ways probably more fully now than before she had dementia, in fact. So I think the importance of a dementia champion is somebody who literally is leading the way, shining a light to show the positives, because in the media, as we know, so often what we hear are the negative stories, and I think we need to counteract those. I'm very, very aware that, certainly over here in the UK, that these negative stories cause people who don't have a lot of experience in the field to then think, well, you know, this is how it must be for everybody, and therefore then there becomes a very negative attitude towards the sorts of care services that could be available for people. So, you know, I think to be able to counteract that and show what's possible and have a much more positive image of, for example, care homes, that as long as they are good care homes with the right dementia champion leading them, can be a really wonderful place for people to go, and it should never be seen as a negative choice. What we need to do is change that round into being a positive choice of somewhere that can uniquely offer people a service that's going to help them to live well. One of the things I was going to say as well, Laurie, is that I'm very interested in, for Dementia Champions, when we think about the qualities, on the leadership course that I run, which is our Be Inspired leadership program, I talk to people who come on that about how inspirational leaders need to have 5 ways of thinking, and that's drawn from Howard Gardner, who's from the Harvard University's five minds of the inspirational leader. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Do you want me to just tell you very briefly a little bit about that? Because I think that's probably quite helpful to think about a dementia champion then.
I would love that. Thank you.
Okay, right. So what Howard Gardner says is that these inspirational leaders have 5 different ways of thinking. These are the 5 minds, and that, to be an inspirational leader, we need them all. It's not just one or the other. And the 5 minds, the first one is to have a disciplined mind, and that is about paying really good attention to the learning, really getting all the information that you can, rooting that out, finding all the different resources that are available and being very up to date, for example. And I think that's really important, that we must have as much knowledge as we can about dementia and all the causes and the way that it affects people. But having got that information and that discipline, if you like, about dementia care firmly held within ourselves, the next type of mind is a creative mind. And I think this is where it starts to get interesting. So a creative mind takes up all that information from the discipline and then starts to get creative with it. And earlier on I said to you about having a dementia champion has vision and courage. And I think having a creative mind then helps you to have those visions about, okay, so now I know all this information, what can I do with it? What steps can I take beyond what we currently know? What can I try out? And I think that's what helps to lead us into new developments and new areas. And we've got to try these out if we're going to come up with the successes. Of course, we have failures as well, but creativity is so important. And Gardner says that, that's the one area where often people can be crushed when they want to try creative ideas, that others can crush them, and that's the bit that we really need to nurture. The third way of thinking, the third style, is synthesis, and to have a synthesizing mind. And really that's about taking all the different elements of the different disciplines that we actually do draw on when we're, for example, delivering good care. So I describe this in the courses that I run, of course, that if you're running a care home, then you have the discipline of, I hope, good person-centered care philosophy, but you'll also have the discipline of good business management. You'll have the good discipline of applying the legislation and the policies and procedures. You'll have many other disciplines, and the synthesizing mind can pull all these together and not just do what I call silo thinking, but be able to pull them all together and see how they all work together for the better benefits of the people who are receiving the care. And the other 2 types of thinking are respectful mind and ethical mind. So I think the respectful mind probably speaks for itself, and the ethical mind is about the values and beliefs that underpin the service that we're delivering. So for me, I come from a humanistic frame of reference. So that is that everybody's got the potential for development. No matter what disabilities they've got, there's always abilities too, and those are what we need to draw on. So that's what I mean by the 5 minds, and I think a dementia champion can bring those to the table, to the services, wherever they are, and to help people to get the best quality of life possible.
I love
it. I hope that's okay.
No, because I think that really does define and shows what's needed, because I think so much of the time, we talk in terms of people staying in the box, and being formulated, and it's so much more than that. I mean, the box is important, because it's a holding container. But, all these other pieces are just so critical in terms of being able to approach things differently and to really be able to listen to the multitudes and the diversity, especially with this disease, because, we always talk about, if you've seen one person with Alzheimer's or dementia, you've seen one person with Alzheimer's or dementia, well, then multiply that times their care partner, and then multiply that times the environment that they're in. And it's constantly changing. And so it's so critical to be able to be spontaneous and draw upon a pool of knowledge and resources to really, I think, live well and to be able to remove those stigmas and to live proud. You know, you shouldn't be embarrassed because you have a disease or you're caring for someone with a disease, but we see that so often. You know, if someone's got, cancer, they're not embarrassed because they're sick. No. You know, if they've got heart disease, but with dementia, we see that a lot, or I do anyways. I don't know if you would agree with that statement or not, but...
Oh, no, I do agree. I think people are, they say, don't they, that the dementia's kind of now following the same route that cancer did, the way that people think about it. I mean, that, cancer was something that people didn't talk about and kept hidden and were scared to talk about. And that's come out of the shadows now, and people are much more open about it. And dementia, over here in the UK, we're beginning on that journey, but still people feel there's a great stigma attached. And I wonder sometimes about, the philosopher who said, I think, therefore I am, actually did us a great disservice, because it kind of implies that if you can't think so clearly, perhaps you're not. And of course we know that's a nonsense. It's about being, isn't it, rather than thinking that's important to us.
Very, very much so. That is a really good distinction as well, with that. Can you give us some examples of different types of dementia champions that you're seeing over in the UK?
Yes, I can. Yes, well, we, as I mentioned earlier on, I have this program called the Be Inspired Dementia Care Program. And that's for helping people to develop their skills as dementia champions. And the kind of people who come on those courses are very varied, actually. We have qualified nurses, we have occupational therapists, we have activity providers and coordinators, but also we have, very occasionally, I have to say at the moment, I'd like it to be more family members coming along. Volunteers who are working in voluntary services as well. So it's quite a range, and I think it can be anybody who can inspire others, really, who can take on that role. I do think for the Be Inspired programme particularly, though, I do say as well it also needs to be somebody who has got the remit to be able to make change happen. So, somebody who can, especially in formal care settings, that they are people who can say, lead the way and say this needs to change, and that people are going to follow that. I think that can be quite important sometimes. Otherwise, you can feel a bit like a lone voice and nothing changes.
Yeah, I think you do need to have that quality of being a little bit of a Pied Piper, where you can get the troops to follow you. And I think you have to approach it, one of the things that drives me absolutely bananas here in the U.S., and I don't know if this was a battle you guys ever felt, but, we tend to like to try to motivate people by fear. And it drives me just right up a wall, because I like to drive people by hope and promise and use that creativity to empower people instead of keep cramming them in the box, and say that we're limited.
Are you familiar with appreciative inquiry as an approach?
No, I'm not.
Exactly.
With that one either.
Appreciative inquiry.
Okay.
So it's about appreciating the good things, really, as an approach rather than problem-solving approaches. I use appreciative inquiry approaches. So, for example, if I'm working with a care setting and getting them to look at the culture of their care in order to develop it and make it, make improvements, then, for example, one thing I'll do is get the care workers to have a meal with the residents in the care home. But what I want them to do while they're having lunch with them, joining them for lunch, is to look at both the physical care setting and also the social care setting around that dining, which is such a wonderful experience to be able to do that, and look at all the good things that are happening, and then think about how they can focus on those and make them happen more. So it appreciates, it builds from identifying the good rather than that kind of fear focus that can happen if you're getting care workers to identify the negatives, then immediately they're going to feel as though they're doing something wrong, and it's really important, to bring them on side and help them to build on the good stuff. And because if we're trying to support this idea of this culture of a person-centered approach towards people with dementia, we've got to apply the same approach to the people who are delivering the care as well. If we demoralise them, then we can't possibly expect them to deliver person-centered care to somebody else.
Very good, very, very good point. And I think that happens a lot in our workplaces and also at home. I mean, I think I fell into that trap with my brothers, and I didn't even know it. But because of my perfectionism, they just felt they could never meet my demands, and so they said, "Okay, do it," and they just kind of walked away. And then I got mad, but I had a big piece I played in that. And I didn't realize it because I was kind of the driver in the family and the organizer, and that was my role. But I didn't realize all the outcomes of that personality style. And it wasn't inclusive, and I've really learned to let go of my perfectionism now, and realizing that things can get done in multiple ways, and that it's important that they get done in different ways, because it would be a pretty boring life if everything was delivered in the same fashion. We turn into the Stepford wives and things there. Can you talk a little bit in terms of the UK? And you guys just have such a massive presence. I mean, I just bow to you every morning. I look at the Google stuff, and you guys have so much going on, and I'm like, for every 50 things you guys are doing, the US has one. If that. And we just aren't working as a team over here. How have you guys done that? How have you really, just all embraced this, Dementia Friendly and Dementia Champions, and you're having these wonderful open conversations that are still, for the most part, very taboo here in our country. There's a lot more talking about it, but I mean, for the most part, it's not out in the open. We're still locked in the closet, and it makes people very uncomfortable to have conversations about dementia.
Okay, right, that's interesting. Right, all right. Well, where do I start? Well, I suppose, as you know, we've got our national dementia strategy, which was back in 2009. But of course, I think probably the very first point where it was about, I think, about bringing hope into the equation, really, for how we are able to do something about dementia. That was one of the key turning points for the UK, and that came about in the early 1990s, led by a really charismatic individual called Tom Kidswood, and he was working with a university up in the north of the country as a psychologist, and he was actually asked to go into a dementia care daycare facility to do an audit, I think, of how the service was doing. And so he went there with his kind of psychologist hat on and had got a few assessment tools that he was going to use. But he discovered, of course, that while the assessment tools were helpful for looking at the physical environment, so they could kind of measure whether the room size is adequate and was there enough chairs and enough toilets and all those kinds of things. And there were tools for looking at the job satisfaction of the staff in the facility. But the tools that were there for looking at the experience of people with dementia that were using the service really weren't adequate, because they would have been fine if except for the fact that they were purely about interviewing people, and not everybody in the service was able to respond to that kind of interview process. So that was a kind of big turning point, really. Tom then started to think about what was going on in the field of dementia care, and why were people with dementia, why were their voices not being heard, why were they being excluded? And from that, he one of the very early papers that he wrote was actually called The Dialectics of Dementia, with particular reference to Alzheimer's disease. And I read that in 1990 and got very excited about it, because he made a proposal that actually dementia was far more than just the neurological damage caused by conditions such as Alzheimer's disease. And he made a proposal for an equation of several factors that combined into this picture of dementia as a disability. And those factors included, of course, the neurological damage, but also what he called the social psychology. So, in other words, the way that individuals affect the emotions and the behaviours of each other, plus the personality of each individual and their life story, their biography, and also, of course, both their physical and their mental health. And I think that was a massive turning point. It certainly was for me. I got very excited when I read that paper, and I wrote to Tom, and then eventually I worked with him for a number of years, and he was really, I think, single-handedly almost begun to turn around the whole reframing of dementia in this country, to seeing it from being purely a medical model into being what we called the person-centred model, which brings all those factors together. And what was wonderful is because it gives us all a sense of hope, because we can't maybe do much at the moment about the conditions that cause dementia. And I suppose you could say we can't change somebody's personality and life history, but we can certainly do a lot about their health, and most certainly we can do something about the way that we engage with people, and we can either nurture them or undermine them. And so I think that whole framework and the idea of person-centred care was the beginnings then of this sea change, this whole kind of wave of change that happened, which has led us up to our National Dementia Strategy. And of course, our government has begun to recognise that something has to be done, because, as we know, the number of people with dementia across all our countries is increasing, not because the prevalence is increasing, but just because people are living longer. And so realising that there's something we can do through these other approaches is very valuable to our government as well. So they have got on board with that and started to look at non-pharmacological ways and non-medical ways that we can also support people to live well. That was a very long answer, Laurie. Sorry.
Oh, no. You're doing a great job. So, no, I think it's very interesting on how things, what starts, what's that spark that can get that campfire going and get that flame burning. I think it's very interesting how it transpires, in our world today. And I just think it's something I am working very, very hard on. Trying to make change here in the U.S. And, my vision, of course, is globally all of us merging together and really supporting one another with information and knowledge, to fight this battle. One of the things that I love, when you were talking about being, person-centered from that medical model, and I personally think that it needs to shift into the research aspect as well, because, and not everyone agrees with me on this, but I think that there is so much that can be done on an environmental basis to allow people to live a more fulfilled life with dementia. And right now, we're pouring a lot of money into research, which is still underfunded and is still needed, so don't get me wrong with that. But we are not seeing, anyways, here in our country, even close to similar amounts being put into support services, helping people live well with dementia today and in the near future. And one of my beliefs is that if we would put more money into those social supports, we could really get a better idea of what this disease actually is, because so much of it is behavior-oriented due to our lack of knowledge in terms of environmental controls and in different ways to interact. And instead of giving people a pill to try to fix something when maybe we can approach it different, use a different tone of voice or position somebody, in a different manner so they're not getting glare from light or, the reverberation of sound. To me, I would think it would be easier for those scientists to really be able to find out what is it that would help. I mean, I know that the brain is deteriorating, but really it's the side effects that people, of any type of disease that people want to be dealt with, until there's a cure to be found. And so in my mind, it would make more sense to really put money into removing a lot of these reactions that we like to call behaviors when they don't fit into our mode, and help people live well so we really know what are the symptoms of this disease, because I don't think we really know. What are your thoughts to that line of thinking?
Oh, yes. Well, I agree with you. I think, we and that's why I like, and over here we use the idea of dementia as being this disability rather than an illness or a disease. That, of course, there are the conditions, diseases such as I said earlier on, as Alzheimer's and Lewy body disease and so on. But the disability is, you're quite right, it's caused as much by, if somebody's got those cognitive impairments happening, it's then going to have an impact on their behaviour, because it's going to the impairments of the function of the brain are going to make it more difficult, if you like, for somebody to be able to find their way, or as you said, to deal with glare, or to make sense of what somebody's saying or what they're reading and so on. So, if we can't alter what's happening in the brain, we can certainly do it from the other end and adjust the environment to compensate for that impairment, and then the disability doesn't happen. And we're very good. We know so much, and we already understand that concept for people with physical disabilities. We do have, don't we? We have these altered environments, physical environments. We make sure most places now have electronically opening doors in the public buildings. I'm meaning, and we have dropped curbs so people can get up and down them easily if they've got wheelchairs. We have wider corridors. We understand all that, but we haven't done the same for people with cognitive disabilities. And if we got that right, it would be so much more helpful to us all, never mind people with cognitive disability. So, over here we've got these dementia-friendly communities. I'm just about to start helping my local community, doing a bit of voluntary work with them. But we're going to have dementia-friendly high streets, so we'll be working with groups of shops to help them to realise how you can do the same sort of thing for people with cognitive disabilities, just with some good signage. For example, you go into public toilets and you're lucky if you can find the signs, see the signs that actually say toilets and have a picture that is going to be helpful. But when you get into the public ones, often there's more than one cubicle. When you come out, the problem can be for somebody with dementia, all those doors look alike, and they might have got in there. Coming out might be equally a problem, and just purely an exit sign on the door for the way out might be a good idea. So there's many things we can tweak that don't need to kind of undermine somebody's sense of self-esteem, but would just be helpful to us all. And equally, of course, we're going to reduce disability.
Well, and I love that, looking at it and phrasing it as a disability versus a disease. I'm gonna start using that much more, because we really do look at it as a disease, and we have been, equating it almost to a cancer, heart disease, and all of those types of things. And there's some validity to some point, but I think it really makes much more sense to go utilizing it as a disability. I think over here in the U.S. they're scared to death about using it as a disability just because of funding purposes too. Because people just have to battle to get Social Security disability, and many times will have to apply 2, 3, and even 4 times to get coverage. And that's.
But what you were saying. Sorry, Laurie, go on.
Oh, no,
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say, but as you were saying, though, it's the functional problems that somebody has that impacts on their lives, whether it's social function or doing things function. And so that's the disability. I kind of describe dementia as the umbrella term, the word dementia, for all the difficulties that people have doing things. And those are caused by the impairments in the brain, but also caused then on top of that by the way people set up around that person either helpful buildings or bewildering buildings, and also it's people that relate to each other and can either be nurturing or undermining in the way they relate to them. So of course we do have the diseases and the Alzheimer's and so on, but I tend to use the analogy of when we say we've got a cold, that's the umbrella term for the sore throat, runny nose, etc. And those are all, and the difficulties that then we have because of those are the functional problems. But the cause of a cold is the rhinovirus, just as the cause of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. And I think it's really important to get the distinction between what are the conditions and what are the functional problems, and that the functional problems, the overarching name for those is this word dementia. And then we're into that. I just think that opens a lot more doors then for thinking about, okay, so in that case, what can I do to get over these problems? So we can either look for what I call scaffolding, things that compensate for the person's disability, such as the use of assistive technology or tweaking the environment with different coloured doors or signs and so on. But also we can then begin to look at restorative strategies as well, of helping the person do some relearning using methods that are going to be helpful to them. I'm just at the very beginning of a big research study here in the UK. We've got 6 sites around the UK with occupational therapists going in. In total, we'll have worked with 480 people with dementia by the time we've finished, using those kinds of strategies as using what we're calling it's a cognitive rehabilitation program. And at the end of it, we'll be able to see what the impact has been on individuals using that rather than using medication approaches. So that will be interesting when we get to the other end. It'll be a few years away before we get there.
Well, that'll be really, really interesting. You're correct. And you'll have to keep us posted on that. We'll have to have you back.
Will do, yeah.
I would like to just throw out to our audience, if anyone is listening and has a question for Jackie, please don't be shy. You can go ahead and use the chat box, or you can call in live to the show at 714-364-4757. Again, that's 714-364-4757. In the meantime, Jackie, can you maybe give a couple of pointers to first family members and then businesses on what could they do? What are some simple things they could do to help be a dementia champion in their own world there?
Okay, right. What could they do? Well, first of all, I think it's about spreading good practice. I think that's really important, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But just to say, it's a good point to say it, we've actually, or I've created, and I know you're a member of it, we've got a LinkedIn group called Dementia Champions, and so anybody who's listening who wants to join that group, take a look, because that is absolutely for spreading good stories, the positive stories, because I think we've got to start from there. We've got to identify what's possible rather than only dwell on what the negatives are, and so that's a really good place to share those stories. And of course, I know there's also on your site too as well, Laurie. On our we also have a resource on our website which is free for both families and for professionals to use, and we're getting really amazing comments coming back from that now as well. That's the site is the 3 W's and then dementia-champions.org, and on there's lots and lots of information about what you can do with the building, what you can do with the team, and what you can do with both the leadership and the management. So I think those are the 3 critical areas to break down, to look at. So with the building, I talk about making the building dementia friendly. And so really you can do some quite global sort of changes to the environment that are going to perhaps help several different people. But if you're a family member living at home, you'd need to know what the difficulties are for your person, that you're looking after and supporting, and then you'd know exactly what to put in to support them. So if you look on that site, that might well help you. So, I mean, a very, very small example, but a fairly common one, is that sometimes, and this has certainly happened for me when I've been to visit people, I seem to talk about toilets a lot, and I don't know if it's my background as an occupational therapist, but quite often I visit people and they have difficulty using the toilet. And it might not actually be about physically using the toilet. Actually, what the problem might be is when they get to the bathroom door, for some reason or other, they're not then going in and finding the toilet. And that, for example, it depends on where the damage is for somebody. So it could be that they're not recognising the toilet, and that might be a visual recognition problem. So a family carer can help that person by presenting that object, the toilet, to them in a different way. So, for example, just reaching in and flushing the toilet, the sound of it might trigger the recognition of what it is if they're not visually recognising it, because it's two very distinct areas of the brain that store those memory images for that particular object. So I suppose what I'm saying is, if somebody has a problem relating to something in their world that they need to use, don't present it just through the one sense. Try the 5 senses, and that might help, because somebody's maybe got a problem processing through one sense, but some of the others might still be working fine. So that's kind of one tip that I would say.
I want to just comment on utilizing all the senses. That is just such a simple thing to do, but is so often overlooked and is so powerful in terms of connecting and working with people. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I didn't mean to interrupt you there. So go ahead. But I just wanted to highlight that point.
Yes, thank you. And you asked about the care providers, and I think for care providers, I think there's two combined elements. One is about the leadership, and one is about and it's leadership of the team, and I think having a really strong team approach and seeing everybody in that team as having an equal value, maybe all doing different jobs, but all equally important. And the team themselves need to be given the right training, and it's no good, I think, in dementia care giving people a quick couple of hours or half a day course and thinking that's going to have ticked that box and that's enough. It is a specialist area of work, and people need specialist skills and knowledge, and so they need a really good, robust training program to help them with that. But then once they've actually done that learning, the leadership part comes then in supporting those team members to put into practice what they've learned. I mean, so often I've met people who've come on the courses, and then afterwards they're not then able to actually put into practice what they've learned, and they're so inspired and want to go ahead and do it, and it's such a shame then, and such a waste of money if they're not able to actually put things into practice. So I suppose for care providers, I would say get a good training needs analysis, make sure that everybody understands dementia, not just the people who are doing the care support, but everybody comes into contact with those service users, those residents, or whatever other services they have. So whether it's somebody who's answering the telephone, or somebody who's doing the administration, or the laundry, or the cook, or whoever, they all should equally understand what dementia is and how it's affecting their residents, and be able to communicate well with them. And I think a good test of that is that when somebody visits a care home or phones them up and asks about the service they provide, any member of that team should be able to very proudly say, we are specialists in dementia care. Not we take people with dementia here, but truly they are specialists, which is something quite different to just admitting people to your care service.
I like that, and I'm very much on plate with having everybody understand the disease and the services, and understanding that they have an impact. I think too often, we categorize people with their housekeeping, their maintenance, their food service, and sometimes they have spectacular relationships with these people and have a knowledge base that isn't being shared because they're put in a box. And they're viewed as not important. And, as a family member, to me, that just makes me feel so much more relaxed and confident that my loved one is being cared for when I know that all those levels get it and that they're engaged.
Yes.
There are some communities here in the U.S., and I love this practice, where every week every employee has to spend, and it varies, but 15 minutes to a half an hour every week, at least with one resident, just on a one-to-one, no matter what their role is. It's just scheduled in as part of their job, so that they don't lose focus of why they're there. And I think that's
practice, yes.
And there's others where, I've seen exceptional care where someone might be cleaning a room and then gets engaged in a conversation, and the nurse comes in and sees something needs to still be vacuumed, and she picks up the vacuum and lets them have their conversation. And it's not, I'm doing your job. There's not that leveraging going on. It really is a team sport. And it's very, very personal.
And that's really good. That's really good examples, isn't it? What we were talking earlier on about the synthesized thinking, that everybody's part of the team, and yes, it's all working towards one common goal, really. Absolutely.
Yeah, very, very exciting times. I think the possibilities are just endless. One of the things that I have seen, and I'm sure that you've seen it too when you're teaching, is just the empowerment of people believing that they can make a difference as one single person. And one of the exercises that I use is just asking people to kind of break down in a really simple terminology of what can they do. In the scheme of things, they probably aren't going to cure the disease. We don't have funding for that. So in a realistic fashion, what can you do? And it might just be engaging people. It might be eye contact. It might be smiling. It might be using care partner versus caregiver. Just really small. It doesn't have to be big. And then I make them envision what will that feel like to them. How are people with dementia going to react to that one change? What do they visualize there? And, those are usually positive thoughts. And then how is that going to make them feel, which is always positive. And then visualizing if they could get other people on board, what would that look like and what would that do? And over one simple little task like smiling or saying hi or taking a couple of seconds, or giving a person with dementia, 8 more seconds to respond to a question before pushing them, for an answer, whatever it is. But it's amazing the power that they sense when you break it down and you get them to feel the difference the task can make in terms of how it's delivered. Instead of just focusing on the task. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things that you guys have done over in the UK is you really are focusing on the feeling and the emotion and the engagement, much more so than...
Yes, and we get to look at the body language and think, try and move away so much from the facts of what does somebody mean and what are they saying into, well, what are they actually feeling? And then you can respond on a feelings level back to that person. But of course, you've got Naomi File as well, and she does. She's the founder of the validation therapy movement. Which is very powerful because that validates, shows that the person that they're feeling is valid. That's what that means, isn't it? So, that comes from Naomi's from the States, isn't she?
Yep. But she really had to battle for a position here. You guys embraced her much more than we did. And
really?
We just had her 80th, I think it was her 80th birthday party last year in celebration. And things are starting to take off more in the States here, but it was really sad she had to go outside for the recognition and the power. In fact, I had a friend who was taking part in the training for validation, and she wants to use my mom, as her kind of test person. And so I went with her for the first session, and I videotaped, and all my friends know that my mom's been in her end stages for 4 years, and she really does not interact much at all. And we took this video, and Janelle is singing and engaging with my mom, and I'm showing it to my friends, and every single one of them said, well, I thought she couldn't do that anymore. I thought she couldn't. I didn't think she was this good. I'm like, she's not this good all the time. But this is the power of this method. These are the moments you can have, if we take the time. And they were just amazed, just absolutely amazed. I think at first they thought I was crazy going, Lori's telling us, she's in her end stages and she really can't talk. And she, for the most part, she can't, but there's these precious,
the wonderful thing
precious
is that,
moments.
And what's so important is that it's obviously that you can see the wonderful impact on the person who's living with dementia, but you equally get, the payback you get is wonderful too. The person who's delivering that moment equally gets a wonderful feeling from it, don't they? So it's for both parties. And I think it's important. I absolutely agree with what you were saying earlier on. I think it's really important to recognise that sometimes it might not be a massive improvement, a massive change, but to value the little things that happen is really important. I think sometimes care workers and families can get quite despondent because they're hoping for a massive change, and it might be purely that you get eye contact where there was none before, or you get a smile where there wasn't one before, and it's those little breakthroughs are just as important. And a bit like you was, I get people to think all the time whenever they're with somebody, no matter what they're doing, to think, how can I make this experience at this moment that bit better? And always be striving to make it an experience rather than just a task. I talk about having an activity model of care as well, so that people are often divided over here into they're either doing care or they're doing activities, as though the two things are completely separate. And activities are sometimes seen as the leisure, the hobbies and craft work and so on. But I think personal care should be seen as personal care activity if it's done well, and the person's helped to engage in it, and it's meaningful and where possible enjoyable. Just think about a good example is having a bath. I think a task approach to having a bath is a minimal amount of water, and you're in for a quick scrub and you're back out before you know it. Whereas most of us enjoy a really nice long soak in a lovely bubble bath with music playing and candles or whatever, all those lovely little bits and pieces, and we should be helping people that we're looking after to enjoy that too. And I know the argument sometimes can be, well, we haven't got the time for that, but by spending that little bit of time in that wonderful therapeutic bathing activity, you can actually, in fact, have such an impact on the person's well-being and therefore the emotions affecting the behaviours, what happens afterwards, that you can have actually saved huge amounts of time because the person is going to be so more relaxed and less likely to be carrying out distressed behaviours that they might have done otherwise.
Very, very true. And I think, for me, one of the biggest shifts that dementia has made in my life is an appreciation for the little things. The big events aren't important to me anymore. Because there's so many more little moments in your life that you can capture than there are big events. So, my life is much more joyful because I really recognize and I appreciate them. All these little teeny things like a smile or a touch or a comment or a giggle or just eyes glistening and lighting up, just that connection, those little, you can feel your life so much more if we focus on the little things because there's so much more of them. And that's just a fabulous thing for me. I mean, it has really reframed the way I live my life and look at life in general. It's been quite beautiful, and I have to thank dementia for that, because I didn't get that before this disease. I was still focused on the big stuff. You know.
Yes, well, and that's partly our society as well, isn't it? That we're focused always on the next thing and the next thing. And I think what people with who are living with dementia teach us is to much be more mindful and focus on the here and now.
Yep, definitely. Well, I cannot believe that our hour has flown by. I would love to have you back on the show again another time. Jackie, how do people get a hold of you? What are the best ways? I know you had mentioned if they're on LinkedIn, you know, they can go to your Dementia Champions and be part of the group, which I highly recommend. It's just very insightful. The conversations are marvelous. They're just marvelous. And then your website, I'm assuming, DementiaChampions.org. Yes. And is there a hyphen?
There is a hyphen, yes. It's dementia-champions.org, O-R-G. Yes, so that's probably the other way. And if people go there, then they'll find me on that website as well. So, and all my contact details are on there.
Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough for all you are doing. You are just, you're really a mentor to so many of us, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share all of your insights and wonderful wisdom with us. And I look forward to watching your work and learning more from you in the years to come.
Thank you, Laurie. It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me as well. I've really enjoyed it.
Okay, we'll talk soon. Thanks again. Bye now.
Okay, now. Goodbye. Bye.
I want to let people know before we transition into our next guest, who is going to be just as powerful and just as exciting as Jackie, but we're going to be talking about being a dementia champion in a whole different light that involves the NFL. So that'll be exciting. But I do want to just make a couple of highlights for you. If you didn't hear the last radio show, you might want to go to the archives and listen to that. On that show, we talked about music prescriptions with Choral Health and this new mobile app that's absolutely fantastic, which can help shift attitudes, not just for people with dementia, but for ourselves as well. They have tons of research behind what they do, so they can help people wake up and go to sleep and eat and change moods. And they have it not only music-based, but faith-based as well. And then we had someone talking about the importance of mobile activity, somebody coming to you for activities. Our next show is going to be on June 11th at a regular time at 10 a.m. Central, 11 Eastern Time. And on that show, we're going to be talking about inflammation and Alzheimer's. And so that'll be an interesting conversation. And our last dementia chats, we talked about and those are the webinars I do where I interview people with dementia. We talked about what type of environment would they like to move into when and if the time ever comes that they no longer can live at home. And so that was a really interesting conversation. We also talked about how best to communicate and phrase a question and how long should you wait to let somebody respond to your question. And then again, body temperature came up, which is really interesting because a lot of people don't talk about that, but it is a big change that happens to many with dementia, and it affects their comfort. Our next Dementia Chats webinar will be live on June 11th, and that'll be with Michael and Harry. And then I had lots of fun blog posts that you might want to check out. A few videos, two by Jane Sherman. One was a video that says, "Please talk to us, not about us," which is about an hour-long video of a panel of people with dementia, and it's just a nicely done video. She also did one on the challenges of living with early stage, and then the Hebrew House and Riverwalk also did a really fun video with their residents on walking on sunshine. So if you just need a little pick-me-up and something fun to watch, I would recommend that you do that. And then PBS is going to be doing a special on the 6th, and so you might want to check your local channels on the PBS special coming up. And then I'm looking for people in the New York, New Jersey area to test out some camera equipment from Samsung. So if you're interested at all in doing that, it would need to be for a person with dementia living in that area. Ideally, we're looking for a long-distance caregiver, but please reach out to me and we can have a conversation on that. And again, if you're looking for an association, please check out Alzheimer's Disease International. They can help you out. And if you're looking for a trial, the Tau trials are going on. Go to Alzheimer's Studies. So let me go ahead and introduce our next guest. I saw an article and actually a video that was done on her on a news station, and I just had to reach out to her. Her passion is just very strong, and I think what she's doing is wonderful. Nichole Ivey is our second guest today, and she's a stay-at-home mom, and she has 2 little boys, age 3 and 4, but she has joined the fight against Alzheimer's disease after her husband's paternal grandparents were diagnosed in 2010. And Nichole is trying really hard to get the NFL to join this fight. Her story, I think you'll find not only interesting, but inspiring on how might you become a dementia champion in your own right and change the world. So welcome, Nichole. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
Very good. Very, very good. Can you give us a little more background on your husband's grandparents and how that affected you as a daughter-in-law, in terms of dealing with care?
Absolutely. I joined the family in 2007. We were married in 2007. Around that time, a lot of people in his family were talking about their memory and how it had begun failing. And it's something that I hadn't seen because I hadn't known anything else. But over the following years, until 2010 when they were diagnosed, I noticed a lot of list making, a lot of forgotten birthdays, misplacement of names, and towards the end of their stay in their home, which preceded their diagnosis, they just weren't really getting groceries anymore. Their care for themselves was slipping away, and that was when, obviously, my father-in-law had decided to look into longer-term care for them. But that was how it began, was just small things that we were sort of picking up on, and then once their diagnosis came, then we were obviously rest assured that we could follow up with a better care plan once we knew what was going on.
Okay, wonderful. Can you tell us, basically just a little bit about your cause? NFL Go Purple in September is what it's caused, and how did you get there? Why the NFL?
So after their diagnosis, I was looking for a way to get involved. I think it's so common with family members to think, how is this happening to my family? How did I not know about this until it has happened to my family? What can I do now? And you just sort of sit back aching to stop the process from happening, and there's nothing you can do other than obviously care for them. So around the time they were diagnosed, I was looking for ways to get involved and started the Walk to End Alzheimer's with the Alzheimer's Association with my local chapter. And I think it was 5 or 6 weeks I was able to raise $500 with help of friends and family, and I was just astounded that I had such an outreach from my support system. So the day of the walk, I sort of came around this corner in our local town, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and saw this stream of purple behind me, and it was just in that moment it clicked that I can do something more, and I wasn't sure what it was at that point, but I knew that I could. My husband and I are huge football fans, go Patriots, and we watch every Sunday, and I'm just seeing all these crazy hits they're taking, and it was shortly after that time that I saw a documentary called Blood Equity that chronicles John Mackey's fight and subsequently Sylvia Mackey's fight against dementia and Alzheimer's. And so after seeing that documentary, I thought, okay, the NFL needs to get involved in this because it's their social and moral responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, that they have this huge platform to talk about Alzheimer's. And unfortunately, I personally feel like it's really left out of the national conversation with regard to healthcare, and we really need to focus on it so that we can bring about not only awareness but also, obviously, funding and research.
Well, that's good. Have you reached out to the NFL, and if so, how have you tried?
I have. I've sent emails. I've called the commissioner's office. I've tried linking up via Twitter, Facebook. Obviously, social media being so huge right now, I've really been pushing on that front. I haven't gotten a huge response from the NFL. I've gotten some nice notes, some thoughtful notes saying, this is a great cause and we would certainly support any endeavor for Alzheimer's research, but nothing has committed to no team has committed to any action. I've sort of gotten a little bit of a runaround saying, oh, well, that's, this person's responsibility to get back to you. You might want to get in touch with so-and-so. I recently was in touch with Sylvia Mackey, who forwarded me some information for contact with the NFL that I'm hopeful will bring about some change. I've also been contacting college football teams with the logic that a lot of the people that are graduating are going into the NFL. I've also contacted sponsors. I've recently begun contacting media outlets in hopes that we'll gain a greater following to show the NFL that their fans want to see this happen.
Yeah, I would love to see them get involved. Carl Eller is a friend of mine, and we've talked about it before, but his schedule is so busy, and I'm going to work on him again some more because I don't know if he would have some inside roads. I would really encourage our listeners, if you know somebody who might be of influence at the NFL level or college level, please reach out to Nichole or myself because the injuries are unbelievable that are happening to this group, and they just have a perfect platform to be able to pull people together, in a great activity, fun setting. It doesn't have to be scary. They can raise so much awareness around this that, to me, it's just sad that it's not being utilized. Are there some tactics that you can share with us that maybe our listeners and myself can utilize to help raise awareness of what you're doing, Nichole?
Absolutely. I'm looking for more voices. I have been working tirelessly contacting different media outlets across the nation. I've been targeting the cities that have football teams. So if you live near a city that has a football team, or even if you don't, I contacted my local paper and they did an article which helped gain momentum, and I saw increased signatures on our petition and also increased likes on our Facebook page. So one of two things is going to make this happen. One of them being a huge following, and the NFL seeing that a lot of their fans, the majority of their fans, want to see this happen, to see that there's follow-through for the people that are taking these disastrous hits. And the other thing that could possibly make this happen, like you said, Lori, is someone knowing an insider to push from within the NFL. And I think the key to this, too, is I want to make it clear, I love football. I don't want the game to change. I don't want to see anything happen to football, and I don't think that the NFL is going purple in any way is a condemnation of the league or is incriminating in any way, shape, or form. I think, in fact, it's actually a real positive thing for the NFL because fans can look and say, okay, they're aware that this is happening to their players, and not just to their players. I mean, Alzheimer's affects over 5 million Americans. That's unbelievable. So for them to shine a light on Alzheimer's and say, we need more funding for this disease, it is ravaging families at alarming rates. So for them to get involved and say, we care about this, not just because of our players, but also because of the many, many, many Americans that this affects.
I think that's a really good point. The game is not going away, just like, soccer's not going away and hockey's not going away. It's part of who we are and what we do and what we like to do. One of the things that I'm just going to put a plug in for another colleague of mine that I think could be really helpful to the sports industry is she has come out with this reality comprehensive clock test. And if teams would utilize this, just take this simple clock test after someone gets clocked on the field, and gets hit really hard, they can really tell much more accurately if there are issues with concussions and different things. And it's very inexpensive to take the test to be able to be qualified to do these assessments. And I think we could protect everybody and still let the games go on, which would be just a small piece in terms of being more conscious in terms of how we're playing the game. We're not changing it, but we're just, raising the level of safety in terms of throwing somebody back in the game. And, that little shift can make a huge, huge difference. And so I'm going to throw this website out for people to check on if they haven't. I actually went through the testing, not to be someone who evaluated, but I just wanted to get a good feel. And I was shocked at what all this test can tell people. And it only takes 20 minutes to do it. But it's www. and then clock test, and then rcct.com. That's clock test, and then it's reality comprehensive clock test. That's the RCCT after clocktest.com. But again, there are so many different ways, and you get a group in a stadium like that, and just to be able to talk about dementia or show your support, I think it would be a wonderful, wonderful thing for the NFL and for college and even high school to be able to get behind and back and just acknowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been in contact with the athletic director for the Tar Heels, and he sent me a link to a physician there who's doing work similar to the clock test, I believe. It's actually a balance test, and it's the same idea, is that after a player suffers a concussion, instead of going by historically how they feel, if they're disoriented, et cetera, they can actually test their balance to tell if they're prepared to go back into the game or not. And with increased awareness for Alzheimer's, we can come up with more devices and more ways to save on head injuries in the future.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing with the clock test, and I don't want to get too far off topic on this, but I do think it's a really valuable test, is it evaluates all different parts of the brain. And so somebody might be functioning okay in one and might have their balance okay, but in another area still have some damage going on. And it will make that really clear. And like I said, it's all research-based, and it's a simple test. It's not intimidating for anybody, and you can't fake your way through the test. It's not like, okay, I'll just remember the eye chart. It's not like that. And it can tell if people have had strokes. It can help with incontinence and infections, and so it's much broader than even dementia or concussions as a whole. It really is this test that tests the various parts of the brain to say, is this working or not? And if everybody has a baseline initially, that could just be something everybody does to start with when they do their normal physicals and stuff like that. You just incorporate this into that piece, and then you can look at the two and go, something's not right here. We need a little bit more time to figure this out. We're not saying pull somebody out for life from the game, but let's evaluate this and let's make sure we're not causing any more damage. Let's let the body heal and repair. And those things are huge, in terms of making a difference for both, men and women involved in these games. And so I think that it's just a really neat way to again get the conversation going in a non-threatening way. Is there a way? So you're on Facebook, and so people can go to Facebook and like you there, and when you like a page, I also recommend you share the page with your community, because again, this is about building numbers and having a presence So don't ignore that maybe many of your friends, family, and colleagues would like an opportunity to have a voice and to be part of the numbers. I think sometimes we think, oh, we're pushing it on people. Well, if they don't like it, they don't have to. But it's amazing how many people want to get involved. And I know that for a fact just because of with Alzheimer's Speaks, we've been recognized as the #1 influencer online. That doesn't have to do with me. That has to do with everybody else sharing and spreading the word, and those small little incidental clicks are way more powerful than you can ever imagine. So utilize your power of social media. You don't have to be a whiz king at it, but like it and share it. If you've got a Twitter account, tweet it. If you belong to LinkedIn groups, you can share it that way too on many platforms, or maybe you use other types. Take those couple of minutes to really help Nichole, be a dementia champion and shift.
I'd like to comment on that too, Lori, if I could. Mm-hmm. I'd like to just comment on that briefly too, if I could.
Sure.
I definitely have witnessed the power of sharing on Facebook, and one woman from San Diego, just as one small example of the following that I've created thus far, within probably 24 hours of her sharing our page. She's located in San Diego and runs the Blondes versus Brunettes for the Alzheimer's Association out there. And within about 24 hours, I had over 100 signatures on my petition coming from San Diego and the surrounding areas. So obviously the ripple effect of she shared it, and then a few of her contacts shared it, and a few of their contacts shared it. So the results are absolutely astounding just from sharing it.
Very, very important stuff. And again, it doesn't have to take us a lot of time to do, to be an advocate and to let others know what's going on. In fact, I'm going to go right now and I'm going to post it on all of my Facebook sites and let people know that they can go ahead and help with that as well. I've already liked it, and so I can't like it again. But I think getting those numbers are really, really important. And again, I've just been shocked at this whole social media thing and how interconnected people really want to be. They want a voice to be heard, they want to feel valued, and they want to show that they care, and they can do that. These social media platforms have allowed us to become closer as a community, which I think is really a very, very beautiful thing, and pretty amazing, all in all. With things. Are there other things that people could do for you on this? And maybe I should have you talk about the Blondes versus Brunettes and what is that kind of tie-in? You had mentioned that as well.
Okay, so I'm not authorized to speak on this. I'm not part of it. But I can say that it's a faction of the Alzheimer's Association. They do Blondes versus Brunettes, women football teams throughout the nation. So my closest one is Boston. Theirs is in June. I'm not sure if it's in June for every major city or not, but it's just a charity football game, a flag football game. I've been in contact with several people who run those games in hopes of partnering later on down the road if the NFL will get on board. I have so many ideas with this, but that's one way that we could definitely get the NFL involved as well if they bite.
Okay, yeah, because I've talked with a few people too with the Blondes versus Brunettes, and it's just kind of a fun game to raise awareness and again, get people thinking in a little bit different light, which I think is just incredible. It's the way it needs to be. So, well, very, very cool. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know that we haven't covered at all, or?
I think we covered most everything. We do have the petition also on change.org. I've seen more movement on there than I think I have on our Facebook page. And I like change.org also because it gives me something tangible to send to the NFL and to show to them for people who are not on Facebook or choose to not really be part of the social media scene. So that's also something that listeners can participate in. And like I said before, I'm really reaching out across the nation to try to push for this. So if it's something as simple as contacting your local newspaper, calling your local news station, there's, it's really important steps to take because we just need to gain a greater hold in different cities. I've seen great outreach. I'm located in New England, so I've seen great outreach from New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine, Connecticut. I'd really like to see that spread across the nation.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, Nichole, I really appreciate all that you are doing to be a dementia champion in your own right, and to, the work that you've put into all of this and the effort is quite incredible. And so I hope that, through your continuing pursuit that you're able to make connections to the commissioner, of the NFL and get your voice heard, not just your voice, but all of ours. We need those spokespersons, and we need those people like you thinking out of the box to raise the voice and move forward as a team, and be socially responsible. I think that's really what you're asking for the NFL to do, is to become a leader. They are a leader in their own right, but there's a whole nother level they could step up to, being socially conscious.
Absolutely, and we've seen it with their campaign for breast cancer over the last 3 years. They've really helped to shine a light, and donated also over the course of 3 years, $3 million. So I'm not looking to do it the same way as they do it for breast cancer. I mean, going purple lightly, in that I'm more than happy to work out with the NFL if they're interested. Any variety of ways that we can do this. There's a brewery in New Hampshire that does a special Alzheimer's brew in September and they donate, I think it's 50 cents per bottle. Things like that we can do differently than the breast cancer campaign, but also in the same way that we're still raising awareness on the national platform.
Yeah. Well, and I would be glad to join forces with you in terms of, one of my movements now is getting us to become dementia-friendly businesses and communities. And so, I'd be more than glad to provide them education. I've got tons of resources to be able to support the families that are going through this, and to educate and help people plan with this as well, and then be able to raise their voice and raise their exposure of what they're doing on my different platforms as well. So, if you ever need me, just holler. I would love to be able to help out. This is it's a huge movement over in the UK with businesses and communities getting on board, and they could be one of the first in the US to say this is important. And all they have to do is, Google dementia friendly, and they'll be shocked at what they're doing over in the UK. I mean, they've got dementia aware signias on buses, on recycling trucks, on people's uniforms, on store windows. So it can be done, but we need some brave souls to step up and say this is important. And what better, what a better example than the NFL, where it's affecting their players and their families, to say we're going to support you in any fashion. We're going to make a difference. We're going to turn this country around and be able to help really make life better with this. It'd be a beautiful positioning for them to do. So, again, thank you for all you're doing. And if people want to reach out to Nichole, you can go ahead and Facebook's probably the easiest. Is that correct, Nichole?
Or email. I'm happy to receive email. It's Nichole.ivey@gmail.com.
Okay, and Ivey is Ivey.
Yes, and Nichole is Nichole.
Oh, that's okay. And I think I've been spelling that wrong, so shame on me.
That's totally fine.
Oh, no,
so
it's not.
Nichole.ivey@gmail.com.
I will get that changed all over the place because I have forgotten the H. So I very much apologize. But I want to, again, thank you for your time today and all you're doing.
Thank you for your support.
And please keep us posted. We would love to hear more from you as things progress. Okay?
I will. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye, Nichole.
Bye.
In wrapping up the show today, I want to just invite you again all to our next Dementia Chats webinar. Again, Dementia Chats are where I interview people with dementia, and the next program is going to be on the 11th, and you can go to alzheimerspeaks.com, or you can go to Dementia Chats on Facebook and join us there for more information. Again, if you're looking for an Alzheimer's Association anywhere in the world, just Google Alzheimer's Disease International. And last, again, I highly recommend that you check out Music First with Choral Health and their new app. You'll get three hours of free music just to test it out. Pretty phenomenal application that can really help people with dementia. And what else do I want to tell you? Our next radio show will be on the 11th. In the meantime, have a blessed week, and thanks so much for joining us again. And before you exit, if you haven't liked us and shared us and tweeted us, I would really appreciate your help and your continued support. Have a fantastic day. Bye now.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me. Listen now. Search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.